guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to Talkinsen. It's Ogechi here. Welcome. Welcome back to my channel. It's Ogechi. Welcome. So for this video we are going in on self-confidence and self-esteem, okay? And this video is inspired by story by Manera, okay? And Manera Latsaka, I'll put her name below. Latsaka. Anyways, I'll put her name below. This lady really has helped to bring awareness on different ways people can develop lack of self-esteem, and how early childhood experiences can actually begin the process, okay, and how that actually affects all of us as we get to adulthood. So this is the reason why I'm actually doing this video. I have spoken about this lady in several videos prior because she has really inspired me to share stories about period, and also now focusing on self-esteem, on the things that we may not even pay attention to, and how that affects people. So what I would do is tell you about her story, because I do not want to play the video because of copyright issues, because if they claim copyright, that means due to the monetization issues, every cent, dollars given goes to them, and this video is for Saint Twins. Anyways, I'll put the link to the video from Saint Twins, which is what inspired me, in the description box, so that you can go and have a watch for yourself and understand more on what she is saying and the reason why I'm speaking in my own channel about it. So what we're going to do is actually, first of all, talk about her story, then talk about what self-esteem is, and then look at the different ways in her story where we can pinpoint how she developed those self-esteems, and how she I guess finally come to a realization. Now Manera, I think it's, yeah, she is an author of Awakening Self-Acceptance, and it's because of her stories that inspired her to write these stories. So I would tell you a little bit about her story. It's a full long, almost 30 minutes video, 28 minutes video, or 29 minutes video, and I'll tell you what she said, and then I'll go into everything about everything about self-esteem. Oh God. Forgive me. Okay, Manere, I think that's how I will pronounce her name. Okay, in her video she spoke about, first of all, as she's growing up, she's the last child of her family, and she comes from a family of 10 children plus grandchildren, okay? So she is the youngest of her mother's children, and she spoke of how when she was growing up, the father walked away from the home and perhaps stayed some days outside of the home in order to work and bring money home for food and for upkeep of the family. So when the father is coming back, her sisters or her siblings run past her to go and greet the father, but she, being the youngest, her legs could not carry her to catch up, and she felt left behind, or she was left behind. And she mentioned that even at that, she used to hide in a block before her house and stay there and cry, and no one would notice. So I don't know how young she was speaking, but from what I can gather, she was still a very young child, maybe in her 5 years old, 4, 6, who knows, but she's definitely in her childhood age. So with that happening, I think she felt invisible. I think that's one of the things that we need to look at. She probably felt invisible, okay? And then she told us another story, because this video is a piece of different areas of her life that she picked up that made her feel low self-esteem. Now she told us another story where her mother told her that she is named after her grandmother, because her grandmother said there was something that during her birth they couldn't find a hospital, so it was her grandmother that delivered the mother delivered the mother And because she's the only dark-skinned one in the family, her grandmother said that she looked like her, and since others are much fairer than she is, and so asked the mom to name her after herself, and also used to call her Blackie.
1984. My mother usually say that the day I was born, they couldn't find transport to take her to the hospital. Then her mother had to deliver me herself. So after I was born, my grandmother said to my mother, "You've been giving birth to light-skinned children, and now you say this black one, you are naming her after me." So she used to call me Blackie. So my mother, when she narrates that story to me, not only did it stick with me, it also, I associated myself with an ugly, shy girl.
For her, she took that from a negative perspective, and in her own situation, she saw this as her being ugly. Okay, there was other words that she used to describe herself. She described herself as shy, ugly girl, and in that situation, that became her perception of herself. Okay, so moving on then, we look at another story she told, which is about her period, which I have talked about in a previous video. So during her period, although she grew up in a family of females, okay, she was not told anything about period, and eventually it was her brother that helped her to buy a period pad. But even before that, she said that really broke her self-esteem, because she missed school. She avoided playing with her friends because she was on her period. She missed different, I guess, important areas of her life because of the low self-esteem this whole experience brought to her. So, and then we move on from that story. Before I go to the other aspect of the story that she told, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I realize I haven't even said that, but yeah, if you're liking what I'm speaking about, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And once again, if you really want to get the full gist of everything that was said in that video, don't forget to look at the description box below to get the link to watch the video. It's from Saint Twins TV, okay, on YouTube. So let's continue. In another phase of her life, she mentioned that one of the days she was coming back from school, I guess some boys in her neighborhood were sitting around. One of them she knew, the other she didn't really know. And as she passed by, I don't know if she was in university at that period, I can't remember, but as she passed by, one of them said that she was going to marry her, or she heard them laughing, and she knew that they were talking about her but didn't know what they were talking about. So as she went about her business, one of the men that she knew who was in that crowd came to her and told her that one of her friends said that he would marry her. And for her, that was a very big compliment, because maybe in her life before then, no one has really admired her in that way. So she felt quite, will I say, honored that someone actually admired her enough to want to marry her. So she started a relationship with this very guy. However, her parents were not really keen for it. Actually, her sister did not like the guy that she is with, neither did the brother, okay, but they let her have her own choice. She started a relationship with this person, and she said at one period, although things were good and bad, that one period he actually physically assaulted her by beating her up because of jealousy. What happened was another guy, or another older man, that lived in the same place that they lived with, because she's now living with the boyfriend, okay, was complimenting her or just saying hello to her, and she said he's a joker. It's an older person. She didn't pay attention to the person, but however, the boyfriend was watching and noticing what was going on and became jealous, beat her up, apologized, told her it was just out of jealousy, he wouldn't do it again, blah 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 blah, and told her that she's really going to marry her. And by this time, she's already had a child for him outside of without being wedded, outside of wedlock. So she didn't see much issue with that, but she said she felt like she could not even say no, and then ended up marrying the guy. And on the day of her marriage, her brother died. For her, I felt like this is a sign that this is not going to work, but with her mother's encouragement, she pushed on, married the guy, and eventually from one beating it goes to another one. It just becomes like more physical abuse. Okay, he comes back apologizing, until the very last day she said that he was about to literally kill her. It was either her life or anything, and she had to literally do a quick prayer and say, God, if you allow me to come out of this situation, I will not come back again. That was her little short prayer. Something happened. She said there was a shift in the guy's approach during the time of strangling her or something like that, and with that little space that she had, she was able to leap out and run to her car and lock herself up in the car. Okay, now prior to this, when the whole physical abuse thing was going on, she was going to her parents or the guy's parents to complain about what is going on, and they have a talk about it. He says he's going to stop, but he doesn't stop. Basically the normal domestic abuse situation, but then again she continued. But at that particular point on stage, that was the last straw for her, and she was not going to continue with that marriage, neither was she going to continue with the relationship. And bear in mind, this conversation even started out of the guy going to marry another woman inside the home. So basically he told her he was going to marry another person. She thought it was a joke, and the next thing that another situation is that he brought the girl that he wanted to marry. Okay, and obviously it kind of led to, she was trying to question him or something like that, but he wasn't hearing it. Anyways, I think that's a short version of that story. That's the best way I can summarize it. And then I'll just go into talking about what low self-esteem is and how we can recognize it in her stories and what's led to these things. Because the low self-esteem that she had led her to make the wrong decisions by following a guy that the first time the person likes you, you're like, oh my gosh, he likes me, well, he says he loves me. And that's really what happens when people have low self-esteem. The first compliment they think is the heaven on earth that has come. So let's talk about low self-esteem in general. One of the things we need to start going, just analyze her story. Okay, so before we do that, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Okay, so let's talk about analyzing the story of Manera. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about self-esteem. When you're looking at self-esteem, it doesn't just come on you. You're like, oh, this one thing is what made me feel low self-esteem. We have different times we feel low in our esteem. Okay, and there are times it's high. In certain situations, we may feel more confident in certain situations, and in others we don't. So what I'm trying to say is that it varies. But in her own situation, she was able to piece different incidents, these different big events in her life that really maintained or developed, if not worsened the whole situation or worsened her own esteem. So when we're looking at self-esteem, let's begin from the first story that she told, which was when she was born. The story that her mother told her about her birth and how the mother, how she's being called Blackie. Now, not everyone is going to take that story in a negative form that she does, because I know someone that is like that, but never, we still call the person the name, but we never from a negative perspective. Okay, never from a negative perspective, and the person doesn't see it from a negative perspective. Okay, that is actually the person's name. Okay, you couldn't even do it. It's not Blackie that you call the person, but the person is called different name, which still represent their skin complexion. Okay, so it's like calling someone Paris. Paris is a place, so you don't. It's kind of something that is fact. It's not about. I don't know, it's not about denigrating the person or making the person feel lower. It's just a case of a nickname that became your name. Okay, but it was a name that was given. Okay, so let's talk about the first thing that we need to look at. First of all, when we're looking at the low self-esteem or the self-esteem issues that she develops, we talk about the self-image, okay, and the self-concept or self-perception of herself. So from that story only, that little short story she told, the self-perception that she had of herself is that she was shy and she was ugly because of what? Shy because of her character, ugly because of the perception that she took from the story that was told by her mother to her. That is the first thing that we need to look at. Self-image, self-perception, all these things come under one category. The second category we need to look at is the self-confidence or self-efficacy. Before I even go into that, when we are looking at self-image, we are looking at actually the overall picture a person sees him or herself. Okay, and that could be things like your physical appearance, it could be your identity, or it could be just basically things that you usually do that you use to identify yourself. For example, you can identify yourself physically as a tall person or as a short person. That is a fact. Okay, but the way you internalize that height, it becomes an issue. Do you see yourself as too tall that you can't do anything good, or makes you feel awkward or out of place? Or do you see yourself as tall that you can use it to either play basketball, okay, grab things from a height perspective, okay, be an athletic, have strong legs? How do you see that height? When you look at your shortness, are you also seeing it from that perspective? Short and cute, or short but still can run quite fast? Like, how do you see your height? That's some of the things that we need to look at. And if you look from this story, she did not take that idea that she's actually of a dark skin complexion in a positive way. So it's not because the people around her did not see her positively, but her self-perception or her self-image within, because these things are in thoughts based, okay? Her thought, this is where we're looking at her thoughts. She did not see that in a positive way, okay? So when we then go into self-confidence or self-efficacy or acceptance, because of that, she didn't really accept herself as, okay? She talked to herself as being shy, okay? So when we look at self-confidence, sorry, I made some notes, hence why I'm looking down. When we're looking at, okay, your ability to do things very well or successfully. And in situations like that, let's talk about the second part of the story, which she mentioned about being left behind, okay? Perhaps she felt, I don't know, perhaps she felt that because of her age or because she was small, she felt she was not accepted in the family, or she felt invincible, okay? Perhaps she felt socially awkward. Perhaps she felt that she couldn't cope with being the youngest in the family and not being seen. She also actually missed one part of the story. She mentioned about going to her friend and noticing that they eat much better than they do in the family. That's when she recognized they were poor. Now, in actually recognizing that, you can still see once again how her self-perception of herself was negatively impacted, or how she internalized it. When we're looking at self-esteem, we need to look at the thoughts pattern first of all, okay, and how that played a part. And then when we look at the behavioral aspect of it, the behavioral aspect is that perhaps she shied away from from doing activities with friends. This is when she starts speaking about her family, okay, when she started speaking about not interacting with friends because of how she felt during her period, or even after going to her friend's house who was more wealthier, to say, or had more than her own family. So in that way, so she didn't think of self in a good way, and obviously that led to lower self-confidence in her ability to do things, okay. Then when we go to another aspect of her story, we talk about a sense of worth. What I mean by a sense of worth here is because of this incident that has happened. So first of all, let's think about the self-esteem or sense of worth. And the way I see self-esteem is like to the degree that you see yourself in a way. For example, if you're given a scale of like 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, if you are asked to rate your sense of self or your overall look of yourself, and you put yourself at a 5, well, we will say that is average, but it still represents that you do not see yourself in a way that your ability is beyond a 5. I hope that makes sense. I'll explain much clearer later on. But anyways, we will look at then another aspect. Her emotions were, with that of shyness, anxiety because of obviously things that happened, shame, okay, and a bit of frustration, I like to think so, because of being left behind and not knowing what to do during her period, and feeling invisible and her needs not being met by the mother. So these are some of the things that we need to look at. So when we're looking at the son's self-worth, we need to look at how the story actually affected her thoughts about herself, her behavior, and then her emotion. There are other parts to look at, but I like to think those ones are really a key telltale factor of how a person places their behavior, that places their sense of worth. So there were different impacts that this had on her. One is because of these areas that she saw herself. Before I even get to the relationship part, it affected her school. She started skipping school. She also did not mingle with her friends. She did a lot of things to escape situations, okay? And that in itself is only going to even damage the self-esteem or self-confidence a lot more because of the issues that happened during that period. So one of the things that when you see someone with low self-esteem is just a consistent underperformance. Now in her situation, she wasn't necessarily underperforming in her classrooms that much, but I think it was the case of missing out school. Okay, absence from school was one of the things. One of the behaviors that she showed was avoidance. So she avoided situations that would put her in a place where she will feel uncomfortable. So those are some of the things that we can see from her. Also, please note that someone that is always overperforming or perfectionist doesn't necessarily mean they have high self-esteem. Sometimes it's a way of covering a person's low self-esteem. Okay, so it can go either way to say. And then let's come to the area that I really want to talk about, which is the relationship aspect. So bearing in mind the stories that she has told prior and how she's seen herself, it doesn't make sense that the first compliment, okay, or the first person that even thought of marrying her was the first person that she considered, not knowing whether the person is good or not, okay, despite the apprehensions from family members. She still did not listen, because in her own head, this is the only person that has seen me to be attractive. In relationship, people with low self-esteem, they are very, very sensitive to criticism, disapproval, and have the eagerness to please, even if it hurts them. One of the reasons, and this relationship is not just a case of intimate relationship, like the case between she and her boyfriend, or now her ex-husband. We are looking at a relationship with peers, relationship with family, relationship with anyone, because you just don't want people to leave you. There is that fear, okay? The fear of being left, or always wanting to be wanted, eagerness to please. These are the things that comes out when people have low self-esteem. It affects them a lot in various ways. Okay, these are the impacts that low self-esteem can have. And if we do not check those things out, it will continue. I just wanted to see if there's anything else I would say. Yeah, it will continue. It also impacted on her ability to enjoy in leisure activities, even her work. There was times she said she was missing work because of hiding herself from the public when she was physically abused. So she would stay at home and also try and do self-healing before she goes out again. So as the impact of low self-esteem, which made her to continue in the cycle of abuse, and equally listening to people because she wants to please everyone, not herself, not thinking about her own health, not thinking about just her child. She was willing to make it work. Not just for herself, not necessarily for herself, but also for others, for her family members. And she didn't want to bring shame to the family, or I mean, I guess perhaps for her child as well. And then another thing is self-care, which she stopped looking after herself. I don't know if she really took self-care to a good extent, or she really engaged in that, because she didn't really mention it that much. But I don't even remember if she mentioned it. But I think these are the areas that we need to look at, okay, when we're looking at the impact of low self-esteem on people. One, it affects the relationship they have with activities that they do in their daily lives, the relationships that they have, their ability to look after themselves. And self-care includes looking after the house, because when we are not mentally well, no matter how good you may appear, when you are not mentally well, it shows in your behavior, it shows in your environment. Okay, there are various ways that we can actually do a telltale sign when someone is not there. And mentally unwellness doesn't necessarily mean mental illness. It's just at times there are certain mental health issues that props up, that leads us to feel either depressed, anxious, or lack motivation altogether. So when you find yourself doing all these certain things that this girl is doing, thinking in this negative way, even with the most positive story ever, okay, because I would have assumed it to be positive, that someone is comparing you to your grandmother, but she did not say it that way. So and the grandmother's story was not something to be looked from a negative perspective, but her perception of it was what was taken from a negative perspective. And perhaps one of the reasons why we need to really think and ask others, how have you perceived what I have said to you? If you feel that there's something wrong somewhere, or you yourself, who is the one being told the story, need to also voice your own concern to say. So I think that's some of the things that I wanted to share here. Okay, so when we look at then self-worth in this situation, how could we do the telltale sign of low self-esteem? So the overall opinion of herself, she judged herself negatively, okay, and the value that she attached to herself. That's what I was saying, like in a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the average. Anything below 5, it means low. Anything above 5 means, oh, it's good, you're getting there. As I mentioned, it varies. You can have a really sense of strong esteem in certain activities that you do. That could be in sports, okay, that could be in certain subjects, but you don't have so much confidence in other areas. Could be in something to do with like maths, could be to do with running, it could racing, it could be with anything really. But case is just recognizing your strengths and weaknesses, and making sure that your weaknesses do not outbalance your strengths. And where you can see your weaknesses, we call it areas of improvement. And I prefer that word to some extent, because it shows that there is something that you can always work on, okay, while still maintaining your strength. Don't neglect your strength, because if you neglect your strength, it could actually turn into a weakness. So on that note, I hope this video helps, okay. Yeah, thank you so much, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Yeah, signing off, Talkinsen. Bye.